Welcome to Philosophy Decoded, where we explore timeless wisdom for modern life. Let's decode today's philosophy. You want to be generous, so you give money to everyone who asks. You lend to friends who never pay back. You say yes to every request. Soon you are broke, exhausted, resentful. People take advantage of you. You realize being too generous created problems, so you swing the other way. You become tight with money. You say no to every request. You never help anyone. Now people think you are selfish. You have gone from one extreme to another, and neither works. Now imagine a different approach. You are generous when it makes sense, withholding when appropriate. You help people who genuinely need it, but you do not enable dependency. You give thoughtfully rather than reflexively. You find the sweet spot between stinginess and recklessness. This is not compromise. This is excellence. This is Aristotle's Golden Mean. Today we explore the principle that leads to excellence in every area of life. Not fake balance of doing everything equally, but genuine balance that requires wisdom and judgment. Aristotle was a student of Plato who studied at Plato's academy for 20 years. After Plato died, Aristotle traveled and eventually became tutor to young Alexander, who would become Alexander the Great. Later, Aristotle founded his own school in Athens called the Lyceum. Where Plato focused on abstract forms, Aristotle studied the actual world. The Golden Mean appears in the Nicomachean Ethics. The principle is simple to state but difficult to practice. Virtue lies between two extremes, between excess and deficiency. Too much of something is bad. Too little is also bad. The right amount is where excellence lives. Take courage. On one extreme is cowardice, having too little courage. The coward runs from every danger, avoids all risk. On the other extreme is recklessness, having too much courage or misplaced courage. The reckless person charges into danger without thinking, takes stupid risks. True courage is the middle ground. The courageous person feels fear but acts anyway when appropriate. They assess risks, take necessary chances, avoid foolish ones. This is not the average of cowardice and recklessness. This is its own excellence. Consider self-confidence. Too little is self-deprecation. You downplay your abilities, avoid challenges. Too much is arrogance. You overestimate your abilities, dismiss others. The Golden Mean is proper self-respect. You have an accurate assessment of abilities, acknowledge strengths without exaggerating, recognize limitations without being paralyzed. The same pattern applies across virtues. Generosity is the mean between stinginess and wastefulness. Honesty is between brutal bluntness and deceptive flattery. Ambition is between laziness and obsessive drivenness. In each case, virtue is not found by splitting the difference but by finding the appropriate response. This is crucial. The Golden Mean is not about moderation in all things or being average. It is saying that in any situation, there is an appropriate response that avoids both excess and deficiency. Sometimes the appropriate response is extreme. Sometimes you should be very angry. Sometimes you should spend a lot. The Golden Mean means choosing the right amount for the right situation. Aristotle used the metaphor of archery. When you shoot an arrow, there are infinite ways to miss. You can aim too far left, right, high, low. There is only one way to hit the bullseye. Excellence is like that. There are many ways to go wrong, only one way to get it right. Finding the mean is like finding the bullseye. This makes virtue difficult. It would be easier if ethics were just following rules. Do not lie. Always be generous. But Aristotle recognized that rigid rules do not work in complex situations. The virtuous person must have practical wisdom, what Aristotle called phronesis, to judge each situation. Practical wisdom develops through experience and practice. You learn generosity by being generous and observing results. You learn courage by facing fears and seeing what works. Over time, you develop judgment. The Golden Mean also depends on the individual. The right amount of food for an athlete is different from the right amount for a sedentary person. The right level of risk for an entrepreneur is different from the right level for a retiree. Each person must find their own mean relative to their circumstances. This might sound relativistic, but the mean is objective in that there really is a right answer for each situation. It is subjective only in that the right answer depends on specific facts. A doctor prescribing medicine must consider the patient. The correct dose is not arbitrary, but it is personalized. The golden mean works the same way. Aristotle recognized that people have natural tendencies toward one extreme. Some are naturally cautious. Others are naturally bold. The path to virtue requires recognizing your tendency and deliberately pulling yourself toward the opposite extreme to correct for bias. If you tend toward stinginess, practice being more generous than feels natural. If you tend toward wastefulness, practice restraint. Over time, you calibrate closer to the true mean. This is counterintuitive. To find balance, you sometimes need to be unbalanced in the opposite direction. If a stick is bent one way, you bend it the other way to straighten it. This requires self-knowledge. The golden mean applies to emotions. Aristotle did not say you should never feel strong emotions. He said you should feel the right emotion, toward the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose. Anger is appropriate when you witness injustice. Fear is appropriate facing real danger. The problem is not having emotions but having the wrong emotions or having them in the wrong measure. Consider anger. Too little is apathy. You do not care about injustice. Too much is rage. You explode over minor slights. The golden mean is righteous anger. You feel anger when warranted, express it constructively, and let it go when resolved. This is different from suppressing emotions. The golden mean is about feeling emotions appropriately and expressing them well. Aristotle's ethics is about flourishing or living well, which he called eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is not the same as happiness in the modern sense. It is about actualizing your potential, developing capabilities, living excellently. The golden mean is the path to eudaimonia because extremes prevent flourishing. The coward never achieves anything. The reckless person destroys themselves. Only the courageous person achieves great things while maintaining safety. The same applies across virtues. The stingy person misses opportunities. The wasteful person ends up broke. The generous person builds strong communities. The dishonest person loses trust. The brutally blunt person alienates everyone. The person who speaks truth kindly maintains relationships while upholding integrity. Virtue is not just morally right. It is practically effective. This means ethics is not about self-denial. Aristotle is saying be virtuous because it leads to the best life. The extremes make you miserable. The mean makes you flourish. Virtue requires practice. You do not become virtuous by reading about virtue. You become virtuous by repeatedly doing virtuous actions until they become habitual. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act but a habit. If you want to be generous, start giving. If you want to be courageous, start facing fears. Do it consistently, and it becomes your character. This means virtue is available to everyone. You need commitment and practice. What can you take from the golden mean? First, recognize that most virtues are not about doing more or less but about doing the right amount for the right situation. Each virtue requires judgment. Second, identify your natural tendencies. Where do you typically fall between extremes? Are you naturally cautious or reckless? Stingy or wasteful? Once you know your tendency, you know which direction to pull yourself. Third, practice deliberate overcorrection. If you lean toward one extreme, consciously push toward the other until you find balance. Fourth, develop practical wisdom through experience. Pay attention to results. When you act generously, does it help or enable? Learn from outcomes and adjust. Fifth, remember that the mean is situational. What works in one context may not work in another. Do not apply rigid rules. Sixth, be patient. Developing virtue takes time. You will overshoot in both directions before you find the mean. The goal is progress, not perfection. The golden mean is not the easy middle road. It is the excellent path that requires wisdom, courage, and constant adjustment. It is hitting the bullseye rather than just aiming in the general direction. It is living with excellence rather than stumbling between extremes. This is difficult. It is also the path to flourishing. Next time on Philosophy Decoded, we challenge one of the biggest misconceptions in philosophy. Did Epicurus really say pleasure is the highest good? What did he actually mean? We discover why ancient hedonism looks nothing like modern hedonism and why the pursuit of pleasure might require giving up most pleasures. Do not miss it. And that's the wisdom behind it. If this helped you think deeper, subscribe for weekly explorations of philosophy and meaning. Thanks for watching.